Detective Frank O'Malley had seen plenty of strange deaths in his 23 years with the NYPD, but nothing had prepared him for what lay behind the door of Suite 417 at the Herald Square Hotel on that sweltering afternoon in March 1932. The call had come in as a natural death. A 94-year-old woman named Ida would have finally succumbed after decades of reclusive living. What O'Malley discovered inside that room would haunt him for the rest of his career. The stench hit him first, a combination of rotting food, unwashed bodies, and something else, something that reminded him of the morgue on a hot summer day. Hotel manager Thomas Brennan stood nervously beside him in the hallway, wringing his hands as he explained the situation in hushed tones. "She hasn't left that room in 24 years, Detective. Not once. We slide her meals under the door as she pays her bill through the mail. Yesterday was the first time she opened the door since 1907, screaming for help because her sister was dying." O'Malley pushed open the door to Suite 417 and stepped into a scene from a nightmare. The two-room apartment was packed floor to ceiling with newspapers, empty food containers, and dozens of trunks filled with what appeared to be women's clothing from decades past. The air was thick and oppressive, as if the room itself was struggling to breathe under the weight of accumulated years. In the center of the chaos lay the body of an elderly woman on a makeshift bed of newspapers and moth-eaten blankets. This was Ellen, Ida Wood's supposed sister, though O'Malley would later learn that nothing about these women was what it seemed. Ellen appeared to have died of natural causes, her frail body finally giving up after years of living in conditions that would have killed most people decades earlier. But it was Ida herself who captured O'Malley's attention and filled him with an inexplicable dread. She sat in a corner of the room, draped in layers of tattered silk dresses that had once been elegant, but now hung from her skeletal frame like burial shrouds. Her hair, gone completely white, fell past her shoulders in tangled knots. Her skin was translucent, almost luminous in the dim light, filtering through grimy windows that hadn't been opened in decades. "Mrs. Wood," O'Malley approached her carefully, noting how her eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the physical world. "I'm Detective O'Malley. I understand your sister has passed away." Ida's gaze slowly shifted to meet his, and O'Malley felt a chill run down his spine. Her eyes were the pale blue of winter ice, but they held depths that seemed to contain entire lifetimes of secrets. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, cultured and precise despite her obvious deterioration. "She was never my sister, Detective. Ellen was my creation, just as Ida Wood was my creation. We are all inventions here, phantoms living in a world of our own making." Over the following days, as O'Malley investigated the circumstances of Ellen's death and Ida's bizarre living situation, he began to uncover a story that defied rational explanation. Ida would claim to be the widow of Benjamin Wood, a prominent newspaper publisher and congressman who had died in 1900. She insisted she was a Southern belle from Louisiana, born into wealth and refinement. But as O'Malley delved deeper into her past, he discovered that Ida Mayfield Wood had never existed. The real identity behind the recluse was Ellen Walsh, an Irish immigrant's daughter from Massachusetts who had reinvented herself in the 1850s, complete with a fabricated aristocratic background and Southern accent she had never possessed. She had married Benjamin Wood through a web of lies and charm, and after his death, she had retreated into the Herald Square Hotel with nearly $1 million in cash and securities. But the woman claiming to be her sister Ellen presented an even greater mystery. Hotel records showed that Ellen had been living in the suite since Ida first checked in, but no one could recall ever seeing her. Staff members who had worked at the hotel for decades swore that Ida had always been alone, yet they also insisted there had always been 2 meals delivered, 2 sets of linens changed, 2 voices heard through the door during the rare occasions when sound escaped the sealed room. "I've been thinking about this case," O'Malley confided to Brennan during one of his visits to collect evidence. 24 years is a long time to live with someone in 2 small rooms. Long enough for reality to bend. Brennan nodded nervously, his hands still trembling slightly whenever he discussed Suite 417. There's something else, Detective. Something I never reported because I thought people would think I was losing my mind. What is it? Sometimes, late at night, I would hear singing coming from that room. Two voices, harmonizing old songs from the Civil War era. Beautiful songs, but sad. So sad they made you want to weep just hearing them. But when I would knock on the door to check if everything was all right, the singing would stop immediately, and only one voice would answer, Mrs. Wood's voice, telling me everything was fine. O'Malley felt the familiar chill that had become his constant companion since entering Suite 417. Did you ever see both women together? Even through a crack in the door? Never. In all my years here, I only ever saw Mrs. Wood. But I swear on my mother's grave, Detective, there were two women in that room. Two women who somehow became one. The investigation took an even darker turn when O'Malley examined Ellen's body more closely. The medical examiner reported findings that challenged everything they thought they knew about the case. Ellen's body showed signs of having lived in isolation for decades, but certain details didn't match Ida's account of events. Ellen Escludin, though old and worn, was from a completely different era than Ida's. Her physical features, while bearing some resemblance to Ida, showed differences that suggested they weren't blood relatives at all. More disturbing still were the psychological evaluations O'Malley arranged for Ida. She displayed symptoms of what alienist Dr. Harold Steinberg termed dissociative identity disorder, claiming to remember conversations and experiences as both women. During their sessions, Ida would sometimes refer to herself as Ellen, speaking with a different accent and mannerisms, as if another personality was emerging from within her fractured psyche. She created Ellen as a companion, Dr. Steinberg explained to O'Malley. The isolation, the guilt over her fabricated identity, the loss of her husband, it all combined to fracture her mind. Ellen became real to her, as real as her own reflection. But O'Malley couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than psychological breakdown. The physical evidence in the room suggested two distinct lives lived simultaneously. Different clothing sizes, different personal items, even different handwriting found on scraps of paper throughout the suite. Either Ida Wood was the most elaborate case of multiple personality disorder ever documented, or something far stranger had occurred in Suite 417. The answer came when O'Malley discovered a cache of letters hidden beneath Ellen's makeshift bed. Written in Ida's unmistakable handwriting, the correspondence spanned 24 years and detailed conversations between the two women, arguments about money, discussions of their shared past, and expressions of love and companionship that read like genuine communications between two separate people. But the final letter, dated just days before Ellen's death, revealed the horrifying truth. My dearest Ellen, I know you are fading. I can feel you slipping away from me like smoke through my fingers. For 24 years, you have been my constant companion, my other self, my salvation from the loneliness that would have driven me mad. But I realize now that you were never separate from me at all. You were the part of myself I could never acknowledge, the frightened Irish girl who pretended to be someone she wasn't. Tomorrow I will let you die, and with your death, I will finally become whole again, and I will join you in whatever darkness awaits beyond this room. O'Malley stared at the letter, understanding finally dawning on him. Ida hadn't been living with her sister for 24 years. She had been living with herself, split into two distinct personalities that had become so real, so separate, that one could literally die while the other survived. Ellen's death wasn't just the passing of a companion. It was the death of half of Ida's soul. When he returned to the hotel to confront Ida with his discovery, O'Malley found her sitting in the same corner where he had first encountered her. But something fundamental had changed. The luminous quality of her skin had faded, and her eyes, once filled with mysterious depths, now seemed hollow and empty. She looked up at him with the confusion of someone waking from a very long dream. Detective O'Malley? I'm sorry, I don't remember. Where's Ellen? I was expecting Ellen to bring me my tea. The transformation was complete. With Ellen's death, Ida had lost not only her companion, but also her connection to the complex psychological reality that had sustained her for nearly a quarter century. She was transferred to a private sanitarium, where she died just 3 days later, her body finally giving up without the psychic energy that had kept her alive in that sealed room. O'Malley stood in the empty Suite 417 one final time before the hotel was scheduled to renovate the space. In the afternoon light streaming through the newly cleaned windows, he could almost see the shadows of two women who had lived an entire lifetime within these walls. One real, one imagined, both equally tragic in their isolation and desperate need for human connection. The Herald Square Hotel management sealed all records of Ida Wood's residence, claiming that the publicity would damage their reputation. But hotel employees continued to report strange occurrences in Suite 417 for years afterward. Guests complained of hearing two voices singing softly in the walls, the sound of rustling newspapers when the room was empty, and the overwhelming sense of sadness that seemed to permeate the space no matter how thoroughly it was cleaned and renovated. Thomas Brennan left his position as hotel manager within 6 months, unable to work in a building where he had witnessed the slow dissolution of a human soul. He never spoke publicly about the case, but in private moments, he would tell trusted friends about the night he saw two figures silhouetted against the window of Suite 417. One tall and regal, one shorter and more fragile, standing together in their eternal isolation. O'Malley carried the memory of Ida Wood with him for the rest of his career, a reminder that the human mind was capable of creating realities so vivid and complete that they could sustain life for decades, even in the most impossible circumstances. He never investigated another case quite like it, but he never forgot the lesson of the woman who had lived so deeply within her own imagination that she had created another person entirely. The Herald Square Hotel stands to this day, its upper floors converted to apartments and offices. But Suite 417 remains vacant, not because of any official prohibition, but because no tenant has ever been able to stay longer than a few weeks. They report the same phenomena that plagued the hotel staff decades earlier. Voices in the walls, the rustle of ancient newspapers, and above all, the overwhelming sense that they are not alone, that somewhere in the shadows, two women continue their eternal conversation, trapped forever in a prison of their own making. The woman who never left the hotel had indeed never left, her story becoming part of the building's foundation, a testament to the power of the human mind to create both salvation and damnation from the same desperate need for companionship in a world that had forgotten her name.